Alright, Ed is cutting those 2x10 joists up to the 2x8 flushness with the rest of our floor system because we are going to have to temporarily lift over there. And I'll show you why downstairs. But I'm in the bathroom up here now that we flushed in our last video, the toilet. It looks like, see, there's a heat register in the wall. And so there's a couple of openings downstairs that I felt like that, you know, that's definitely where the wall is. We were seeing the water line come down, and we thought that that is that it might be in the wall, but I see now that it comes up from, you know, through the floor. So we're going to clean some items out of the way here to make a place to work. That's going to mean that as we look at it downstairs and we look up, the subfloor repair goes from one joist here, but doesn't get to the next. And in fact, it is one that can be seen before you're even under the wall. So we're going to plot that out here and get a square cut out from that joist at the back center line of it, or on one of the two if we're doing pairs. Now that I remember, we've got pairs now. We doubled them. So we'll get right from one full side of one joist to the other joist here, front to back, and then to either side a relatively equal distance. And in fact, the larger the distance, the better. So I got a 2-foot square plywood piece, so we'll make it 2 feet wide by 16 inches that way, and that'll put us in the middle of those joists. And we'll cut this old shitty subfloor out, and we'll drop that new plywood in, and we'll cut a hole in it with a hole saw and put a plastic toilet flange on it, and we'll be back up and running for a plumbing situation. I think when we come back and do water, we're going to have that come out of this wall. And we'll do it one way or the other, where we sneak the baseboard out and cut an access panel and, you know, attach a drop ear to the stud that's there somewhere. Anyway, I want the water for a toilet. I always want it to come out of the back wall. I don't want it to come out of the floor. It's just an ugly penetration that collects mop water and everything else that you get in the bathroom. And it's an old school way of doing it, but while we're here, I'd like to move it. It's nothing special about that water connection. It's just dangling around. It was never appropriately done. So let's get started cutting that stuff back. Alright, so if we come up here and look, I went with an opening 16 inches wide for a 16-inch on-center situation. Now, if you only had singular joists, you were trying to be from the middle of one to the middle of the other one. But since we're sistering everybody with a second joist, we only skipped it here, see, because this thing is in the way, and I gave it a cursory yank and it didn't come down. But on our side of every joist, there will be a sister. And so eventually there will be one here. And so I just cut these back flush, because when there's a new piece here, then we can be on 100% of the top surface, 1.5 inches worth, with our new floor repair. And so rather than going to 3/4 of an inch worth of this layout, or going to the center of this one and being on 1.5 inches plus 3/4, you know, 2.25 worth of surface would have been overkill, but digging it out from underneath the wall was also a problem. Now this had rotted, and so, you know, these short pieces were rotten over to where the hole was cut for the, or no, they were just short overall. They already ended here because of this opening. Now the others continue right on as floorboards and are attached over here, and so I couldn't find a place. See, this isn't a whole width. I could cut them flush. So anyway, I realized that I'm going to have that new one here. So that's where we ended up doing that. And we won't miss this thing here. Now, I had been thinking that this was, it is, from below the original floorboards, but I don't know why I didn't realize that they certainly could have had somebody add to this floor, which is what's happened here. It looks like boards again. No, it looks like plywood. Original floorboards, underlayment, plywood. And I don't think, it might be original floorboards, hardwood in the rest of the house, and then in here it's underlayment plywood. Regardless, that total thickness, now I came with a 3/4 inch thick piece of plywood, a project panel. That's a 1 3/4 situation here. So I brought a 3/4 inch or a 23/32 CDX project panel, 2 feet square, and I thought worst case scenario I'll need another one if it's thicker, and I could get a different thickness of plywood in that case. I left myself flexibility, but really when you think about it, it's 1 3/4. That's what LVL is, and so we had the drop from that 16-inch wide piece. That's 14. So that must be something from home. We had the 16 that came off the end of the one that I cut up for these. Is that it there? Must be. That's the new boy. So he's not quite long enough, probably. He's, yeah, 16 by... Now I made the hole 24, so 18 and a half. Sorry, I'm not thinking about... So he's 16 in this way, and he's 18 and a half that way. But we are going to get... We'll have the same drop off another 16-footer, because we've got to add 2 layers to this beam. This is from outside of this kind of part of the video, but I can't get away with this. I got to remove this original joist and put 2 more layers of LVL out here and go to a 4-ply U-shaped head on there. So we'll have another 16-inch wide by 16-foot long piece in here, and we'll have another drop that big that again won't be the right size. But over here we got to have 4 layers of LVL 7 1/4, 12 feet. So 2 12-foot long 16-inch pieces cut into 2 each. And this isn't quite 12, but it's not. So that's the thing. So if we need a piece to fix the floor, this is 127 and 144 is 12. So 37, 47 wouldn't be available left over after a 12. But I could buy a 14-footer. I could buy one 12 for the sake of 2 layers, a 14-footer for the sake of the drop that'll be left to repair the subfloor for the bathroom, exactly, and another 16-footer to be made into 2 more layers to go onto this for a total of one 12, one 14, and one 16-foot long. Now they may only have... I may have to buy a 16 if I want 14. It depends on who I go to. Then it's like you got to look at what's whether they sell it by the foot or in a common stick length. 12, 14, 16, and sometimes 14 is uncommon. So anyway, lots of variables here, but I'm going to fix the floor over there with a piece of 16-inch wide LVL. It'll make a really robust, perfect thickness, and so then it'll be just screwed in. And if somebody comes back to take a layer off that floor someday to do something any differently, they can pop the toilet off, which they'll have it off anyway. They can unscrew it and just drop something else in there instead. Best case scenario I can for a future person. Ed got the bottom edge of these 2x10 joists cut up flush, essentially. We got the beam in here, and that's so that we can support this area while I take all of this away and bring in 4 layers of LVL instead. See, because the beam is under that second to last joist. Now that's because I couldn't get, it wasn't worth going to all the trouble to bring something longer to catch this last joist. We can skip him. This one's on the wall. This one goes over to there, and we're under it. This is a double that was a beam to hang all these ones on. And so the first one over from here, we're underneath it literally with this. And then the other one here that was working as a beam, we're underneath him also. So I can cut this block out and take all these away. And we're just looking for this, you know, this pair and my temporary beam to carry this area of the house while there's nothing here. Which should work okay because we did the same thing over here. We had nothing on this side stairwell. We were up to the last joist on this side with this loop in a similar fashion, and I was able to work on that. And this is a great deal longer than this span, so all things considered, I ought to be able to get in here and do everything that I want to do. So that'll be 4 layers of LVL. We're going to leave all that in there because I'm actually just going to vent through it all instead of running this 4-inch. Because I was talking about putting the 4-inch through, but I can't go through a 2x8 beam with a 5-inch hole or even a 4.5-inch hole to clear the 4-inch line, because you can't take more than 1/3 of an overall beam's total height out of it, and it must be done on the center line unless you're within 30, I think, inches from the end. So in the last 30 inches of the end, you can take up to 1/3 out of either the bottom or the top. And the bottom, I believe you strap the face of it with a steel strap. The top is attached anyway, but after the 30 anyway, which we would have been close enough to the beam here, but still can't take over 1/3. So we are going to come over and down with the 3-inch into the floor, and we're going to come with the 4 and go over through one singular floor bay and down through the wall and into the floor. And then we're just going to vent through all of this, because I can cut a 2-inch line for an 1.5-inch vent. From that 3-inch elbow to this 4-inch elbow, so we have atmospheric pressure right at like a couple feet downstream after the toilet, which is ideal. And through all this stuff, this equipment here, it won't be, you know, nearly 15 or 20 feet to the first vent over here, which is when that comes in. We got to tie a vent across to head this stuff off and give it the appropriate plumbing vents. So that's my new plan. And so I guess I don't have the piece to put in there until I get the LVL tomorrow with the truck. I'm ready to install it, however. The other thing that I can do is I'm ready to work here. I could cut on this and start taking it away. I'm glad that I only put this new piece up with like one nail. I did marry the existing joist to those two new layers over here with a lot of nails, but it's sitting open here, which is all I'm going to need to get started with the Sawzall, and I'll go right on through and just cut through all those nails pretty quickly with the Sawzall, and that'll be down the road. It won't be today. So I'm going to operate here, tearing this down. But the other thing that I can do now, or have to do, is that I have to go get a plug, make your own extension cord outlet end on this circuit that used to go to the plug in the garage, because we have no place to plug in here anymore. We've cut everything off, and I only want to turn this circuit back on. So we'll put a plug end on it, or a outlet end on it, and then we'll be able to run all of our power and chargers and stuff here from that. I've got a string of work lights coming from Amazon that should be here tomorrow, so we'll have a 10 lamp, 100-foot long extension cord that will run around on the ceiling. We'll probably get 5 or 6 lamps through here, 4 or 5 lamps over here, depending. And just, I'm going to put a motion detector sensor on it too, so that if you come in here or you're working in here, the lights will stay on. But if you come in here in the evening or anytime when I'm not here, and you trip that thing, all the lights will come on in here, which should make people uncomfortable if they're poking around my tools while I'm not here, before we get everything all secure. So I guess that means I'm going to get the outlet and put it on the end of that wire, and then I'm going to rip and tear on this some, and then that's the end of my workday, given my logistical factors today. Glue lamb, what you gonna do, lamb? These aren't glue lamb, okay? This is LVL, laminated veneer lumber. And this is intended for use vertically, and therefore it's like a really heavy plywood in the orientation that you use it edgeways. Glue lamb is different. I'll show you one of those one of these days. But this is sold by the foot as in 2 feet increments. We got a 40 down because I need 2 12s. Here it is, 2 12s and a 16 out of it. And so the most effective thing to do is to take it out of a piece you've already got equally. You know, there's pieces lying here of the right width, but you're not going to cut me a 16 out of it and leave a 7 or 8 foot long piece if you can help it. You're going to maintain length. You got your one shorty here. Right? So I had to call around, and places sell it differently. Some just sell different stick lengths. Some will literally sell you the exact by the foot that you want to buy, and do some price comparisons. Some places had a good price on 112, but I again need 212. So anyway, it just takes some time to get the best deal on the material. Okay. So I'm looking up here, and these two layers, excuse me, these two layers stop right in the middle, essentially, of the main beam. And so I think I'd like to start 2 layers end to end with them, because of course this whole 4-layer thing should be one straight shot physically, in terms of the space that it occupies, from that outside wall over there to this outside wall over here. So I'm saying I want to make the 2 core layers of this side of the beam come out and stop here, but then I'm either going to, then there'll be 2 outer layers. I'm either going to make them long on that side and pass them onto these core layers on this side, or vice versa. I think I'll probably pass TBD. Don't know yet. But I'm thinking I would be remiss if I just cut overly long pieces down to fit in here end to end, all 4 pieces. I think it's worth getting a couple of them. If I had had it my way from the beginning here and had known I wanted to do this, because I had looked at it exhaustively earlier than I did, I would have tried to stagger all of the seams. Am I bleeding? No, I guess not. So anyway, what does that mean for me now? Well, you look down this pair over here, and I want to add a layer to this side, and I want it to work out flush to the back of the drywall. And down here, I'm not sure I have what I need. It looks pretty consistent. I guess the plywood surface was set to the face of the wall plate. So it's pretty darn close. If anything, actually, it looks like it bows a little bit here in the center, and that's got to go over. So I think the safest thing to do is not to worry about the front just yet, but to pull the back and replace. This is the thing, see? To pull that layer out of the back, I have to take the weight off of this post to get it by putting this setup over here to take that down and support while I rip that layer off the way that we put these 2 layers up. But I'm currently counting on this temporary beam over here to support this. And what I need to know is where to cut back the ends of this one, this one, this one, and that one to come down the side of this 4th layer. And essentially what I wanted to do was place the 2 ends of those LVLs exactly based on adding 1 layer to this side of them and having it work out where I want in the stairwell. And then based on that location, then I can measure over 1 3/4 inches from this rightmost edge of that LVL and translate that out using the laser to a line that I need to cut off this end, this end, this end, this end, because, right, so they'll exist where they need to, but I really need to start on this side with that layer and build up against these fresh ends with that layer, and then the long layer, and then the 2 shorts, and then the long again on this side of it, because I can't leave that space and presume to slide something in edgeways and slide through the gap that's left. It's never going to happen that way. So if I'm going to build against the fresh ends of those that I've cut back and put layers up, 1, 2, 3, 4, that first layer that goes against those can't be any longer than flush to these ends, because I can't put it up from this side and move over with it. It's overly long, it's going to crash into those. So that's the end of that plan. So the most I can do here is this outermost layer. I could either leave a 16 to hang in here about 1 foot, or I could leave a 12 to hang over there about 1.5 feet or 2, one way or the other on this face, which is, again, I think still worth doing. But I guess it just means that I got to go up and finish cutting this. I cut it off, hacked it off with the Sawzall. I got to cut him flush with these, and then double check that I don't want to move this over a little bit. And I actually can't move it while it's under pressure, but I can do the math. And then if anything, start this layer a little further back or forward, whatever I need to do. Cut these, and then make that first layer of 7 1/4 put that up in the second layer from the same piece. I guess I could get, yeah. So I gotta establish that this is in a good spot to work from, and then cut this back to the ends of it, and then cut these back where they should be, and then 1, 2, 3 layers I could put up on this side, and then I can either put a plug in the hole under the toilet or go get some joist hangers and put the ends of these in hangers on the side of that beam today. And that's after I cut back 100 nails that someone felt were necessary. I guess they wanted 2 in the ends of every floorboard, so it ended up being quite a few nails. So the laser's going to come in handy here, and we're going to do some sawzalling and some oscillating tool cuts. Then we'll make one of these into 2 layers and put them up, and then we'll see where we're at here. Okay, got the laser around. I went up and just had a look at what 1 3/4 of an inch over from this layer is. Hang on. LVL, solid lumber that's got to go away. So here's the edge of the LVL translated out to here. Here's 1 3/4 of an inch. I pulled it down in white on the steel, and if anything, the laser is taking a little bit, to cut the laser line, leaves me a little bit of a gap. That is no problem since we're using hangers and stuff. And then I measured to that white line from the face of the concrete over here, 60.5 inches. So over here right in front of me somewhere, level, like by eye, with the tape, I measured from that wall over here, and that's 60.5 inches. And again, you can see the line is back a little bit. So that if this is the exact face of the LVL, to cut the red line leaves us a little bit of a gap. And that's another nice way to use the plane laser. So I probably won't try to manipulate the ladders around and get up there and cut while using the actual laser line. What I'll do is just go up and put it on there with white pencil where it's going to need to be, and then I'll shut the laser off, move the tripod, and make these cuts. I'm also going to glance at this to make sure that that's indeed, yeah, because then I can just set 3 layers at whatever the length from the face of that LVL to the back side of the rim joist is. Ooh, I'm going to have to cut that much off of that rim joist too, because these need to go up and onto the plate. Looks like I'm going to need a little bit of a plate repair. Oh, there's no more, so that's where the actual sill plate ends. The old one. The new one begins, but to cut him back, he's holding up. He went straight down on his edge to the foundation that he used to be on. There's no old sill plate underneath there. So I'll just sneak a piece in that long before I throw this beam on. Yeah, I can't think of a... I mean, I was going to say I could cut back to here somewhere where this is still on this and put a larger piece in, because it's such a tiny little 3 or 4 inch long piece. It's kind of stupid. We'll see. I'll do something there. Sorry. I'll do something here where I put a larger piece in because I cut this back, or this area was kind of... Ed was worried about it, but now that I'm up here and touching it, it's not really in bad shape at all. It's just ugly. And that was where the old rim joist passed the end of this rim joist, and so there's a hole there. You saw me outside in the garage because of the way that it was nailed. I couldn't get it cut free until I went outside and cut around the edges of it. So there's some fakakta sort of problems here, but we'll get them solved. get a couple layers of LVL in. I guess I could put the 4th layer on and just leave it overly long too, and it would just pass out here. I just better get a piece and put it up there and see if it's coming in with its thickness right where I want to be before I cut anything here. I didn't absolutely confirm that. Seems stupid, but when you come to finish it, if it is a little bit off, it's a real pain in the ass, so we'll see. All right, so if you go up there and look, got just about everything out of my way. There's some little nubble, tippy, random nails like this here those aren't gonna fly. Come on, Christ. Anyway, problems. They're just nailed all over the place. And so I really have to get up and do a solid clean up job. And I got to get that piece of plate in down there. And then we can put up some layers after we make them. Ugh. Alright, well, you saw me fight with that a little bit. Down to the end of the day again, after I get everything that I need. It's just a bad time to try to force things to go or to work, you know. So we won't do that. Ed will give us a hand tomorrow when he has time. So I'm going to go up and trying to save money on this thing. So instead of buying 2 more feet of LVL, I found a piece at my place that will work for his subfloor repair under the toilet. So I'm going to carry the camera and the tripod and the circular saw and my gloves because I can't use my touchscreen on the phone with a glove on. So now I'm holding gloves rather than wearing gloves. Here's the piece I brought. Perfect. Fresh boy, part of my inventory. That's fine though. Everything has to get used somewhere. Oh, and this is a good indication, by the way. You can clearly see in the dry stone all the way around the house, just to conceptualize the fact that under your roof's overhang, your residents should live in a bubble of dry. And it does ultimately come down to the ground, but then from there you want to send things away, send moisture away with the downspout. Oh, geez, I don't even know what to do here. I'll get you set up in there. Because you can truly, your place truly exists then in a dry little zone that is untouched by nature's moisture. Nature's moisture. That's my new spring water brand. This is just where we keep the saw. You store it here, is where it goes, right next to the rest of the stuff. So this is where we left off yesterday, I want to say, or maybe it was the day before. I don't know. What day is it? What year is it? I'll put you here, and we'll try to make it so that you can see something while I'm working. But so I think I've got everything. Oh yeah, I really can't set a piece down in. It is just going to tip off and fall in until I get that sister joist in there. So tomorrow, now that's the thing, the register is down there on the left somewhere. That's keeping us from putting this joist on. So it's in this floor joist bay over here somewhere. Door's a little bit, needs a little adjustment now that we've set the house back down and cranked on it. That's over here somewhere. Is it under the carpet? No. Is that it? Or those are it's a pile of carpet tiles. Well, tomorrow we're going to have to excavate in here and discover the location of that heat, that ductwork, and then remove it. And then Ed and I can sister that joist. And then I can drop that piece of LVL that I don't want to forget in the back of Don's truck and give it back to him and then not have it tomorrow. So I'll get that out here at the site and we'll drop that in place. Screw it down, cut a hole through it, and mount a toilet flange to it. And I need Ed for that. And so then the piece you just watched me fight with, I need Ed to babysit one end of it while I get tough with the other end. So I think I'm kind of down to the end of my workday. Pull that piece out and throw it in the basement and put my stuff back down there. But I guess we're done today, so see you folks tomorrow. Okay, my China brand work lights showed up last night, so I got them strung around in here. What's that?
As we get closer to 3.
Yes, I'll let you know. Ed is digging his hole to China here. Yes. We're going to tie in. Actually, we haven't got a dig over there. That's where we're coming from with the stack. And so we're just coming down the wall. Actually, I should have shown that painted over this way, which is good. I just discovered this. This is nothing. This is do not dig. But we are digging over. Short dog ear in the corner, so there's room for a sump crock, which is actually kind of well represented with that garbage can right now. And then we are going in the stones over to here and over with 4-inch but I expect that it'll turn to 3 and go up and go over and grab that toilet drain, because we can get larger, and I don't want to be 4-inch trying to come inside the wall because of the issue that presents in a finished wall. So this way we will avoid having a 4-inch line in any finished wall, which will be kind of nice. No, I'm sorry, this one has to come down. I thought there was. This is 4-inch in the finished wall. So that means that you can frame this wall entirely with 2x6, so it's thick enough, or we could rely on starting with a layer of 1/2-inch to 1-inch foam before we frame our 2x4 wall, because that's the only way in which we get the R value in the finished basement wall that we need for code anyway. And so I think that's what we'll probably do, meaning that in the location that the 4-inch pipe comes through, it will come over and be practically touching the concrete almost, or touching it, and then there'll be a layer of foam, and then the framing, anyway, the drywall will pass in front of it without having to be the whole framing of the wall any thicker, because that's weird for a variety of reasons to do that all for the sake. And it's not uncommon, but I'm going to try to avoid it here. So now we're going to set up, and I've got Ed's help. We'll get our piece of LVL turned up and get the other one that I made in there at least, if not even a 3rd or a 4th layer. I did start thinking that if I wanted to pass one of these layers of the other layer, the engineering may have been done providing that all 4 layers of this span with 1 post in the middle can have this load, and same over here. If you start making it 3 layers and the 4th layer stops somewhere short, even though you've added the 4th layer from this side of this bearing, that may be a problem. So I've got that question in with the architect, if that makes sense. Should I compose this beam as a running bond of layers, which is stronger overall, or does that weaken to some degree, in their opinion, or as far as the math is concerned, one of the 2 given spans? So now we'll just set up and watch Ed and I get these pieces rassled up in there. All right, Ed and I got our 4-layer LVL beam in here. I don't know how this, I guess I put the first one in, cut side down. You see how much just more professional it looks when you put the factory edge down? That cut edge just looks just shitty, in my opinion. It's a nice straight cut, but it doesn't have the angle, it doesn't have the micro bevel on it, and it doesn't have the same color. And maybe I'm just being kind of a little bitch, I guess, but anyway, talking about this versus the rest of it. Oh yeah, and I put motion detector in here, so if anybody's coming through to snag my toolage, actually it was working best over here, so you come in the window, and this is how you folks come and steal from me, but you get to about here and the light should kick on. Sensor's over there. I believe you can get another sensor, and they could both be coordinated to the little dongle on the plug. Anyway, you can't get much further here from the egress window before the lights come on, and anywhere sort of where the tools are in the evening time. That's the best I can do in this little town right now. There's just holes into everywhere, and I'm certainly not packing this out and bringing it back every day. So that's what you're gonna have. That was nice. It was $20 for the sensor and $100 for this string of 10 lights on a 100-foot cord LED, 5,000K daylight, 10,000 lumen. So they must all be 1,000 lumen units, if my calculations are correct. So I have this, I had been holding this up, not because it's going to fall away completely, but because everything was kind of dipping a little lower, because all that framing was sort of hanging from the floorboards. And so now I can take this away and throw the double joist bucket hanger underneath that and button him on with screws. One thing I was going to mention is you notice this gappage here. Oh, that's why I was going to, because the light turns off when I'm over here. You notice that again, all this existing framing is 7.5 in terms of its height, right? Because, and nowadays it'd be 7.25 as a 2x8, but we finish milled stuff a little bit less back in the day. So all these layers I made at 7.5. But in this region, in this corner where someone used 2x10, it's fully framed to the maximum incorrect. So there was no new plate or anything, but there was an old plate, and someone opted to put 2x10 joists straight down onto the foundation wall instead of plating it first. Then they notched around whatever this was, which is fucking ridiculous, whatever. And this is a full 9.5 2x10 over here. But wait, there's more. All these go from, I want to say, they're either too high at that end as well. I'm not over there. But here they're at nearly 8. Or they are 8. And so what I did was I made all my pieces 7.5, and I justified them all to the bottom edge down here, to the bottom edge, to the bottom edge, to the bottom edge of everything. So it means that these are too high in this area. If I get down here and look straight up, you can see that the boards are in the other orientation. The joists went in the opposite orientation. And over here, the existing floorboards, because this is, again, the original home, they're tight to the top of this framing. So in this weird region, the joists go in the wrong direction. They are higher on their top edge than the top of all this framing. It was somebody's big idea to get one layer of subfloor to come in planar with the existing subfloor, which must have something else on top of it. And so they just didn't feel like the right thing to do would be to add a surface that's thick enough to match. They just push the framing surface up, which is a big no-no, long story short. So I built everything that I did to the bottom to a planar surface, and in the future, if there's problems here, and when you get into a renovation up in the kitchen and you uncover things, you don't find out that you've also got problems downstairs. You find out that you can plot and slice the top of those off with a multi-tool or something, or a sawzall, or circular saw most of the way, and finish with a sawzall from the side. But you can put enough layers of subfloor back down to come in with the original subfloor and pull the extra off of everything and have one homogeneous floor in your kitchen reno in the future. So I'm thinking about that person, whether it's me or somebody else. I'm doing that, and we're holding a gap there, but I'm not about to start making modifications to the dimension of the rip here to get this thing tight to the bottom of that old janky. Not doing that. These are the things that are the high level things that seem simple, but if you're in here working on your own project and you are not thinking about what to hold accuracy with and what to move away from and not be worried about, you want to be in that headspace. What's making the most sense, setting yourself up for success in the future. Over here, I didn't end up passing any of these layers. There's 4 that stop at the halfway point of this, and 4 over here that stop at the halfway point of this here, and that's fine. When you start passing one or the other, then one of the layers doesn't completely reach from one bearing to the other bearing, and it gets tricky, and the architect didn't get back to me, so that's how that cookie crumbled. Up here, I've beaten this group of 4 over to the point where we're almost planar here. And again, imagine this is the sole plate to the wall, 2x4. Studs landed on it. It's coplanar with my subfloor repair that I made. And however, up here we got a bit of a discrepancy. So I still got to beat the side of this over till flush with all of this. And that way, whatever thickness of finishing material will fly right by, and the backside will not lump up or bump up over it. We've got more to figure out in the middle there. We got to, I think it's probably not straight. So we'll get the laser line in here on one of those layers, and we'll see that it does bow away from the laser and come back some. And so, not to mention it hasn't been, I'm looking right at the light, but not to mention it hasn't been nailed to the side. So we'll get the whole thing, that's the thing, we'll get it held over with like one nail, but I'm not gonna put all the nails in it and then try to straighten it out, because the more pins you add when it's curved, the more triangulation of that curve that you've done, and it's a nightmare. And you'll never, in trying to straighten it out, you're trying to increase the distance or decrease the distance between two given pins through it, and they're going to resist you. And then you can multiply that out through the sheer strength of all those pins that you've put in, and you'll never force it straight. So one pin to hold it tight so that we can measure the face of it and see that it's where we want to be, and then try to force it straight until it is, and then hold it there diagonally down through the floor, or the sole plate of the wall up above, down into the top of it to hold it planar, and then finish and pin it all together. Again, order of operations. Ed's been digging over here. He's got a hump. See, because if you got a 4-foot trench that you're doing for the footer, and the center line of the wall is in the center line of that 4-foot trench, then at 2 feet from the center line of the wall is where we hump up to where it's a bit thicker, and at 2 feet from the surface is where the sleeve is, where your trench is trying to be. If I can get the light to come back on, where your trench is coming, hello? Where your trench is trying to be is right at the shoulder in the ground, and we don't want to like curve it away from us here. We want to stay straight. So long story short, we've got a bit of ground dirt to actually chip away, and we don't want to just throw that in. I stopped him here, but it looks like he went back to it. You don't want to just throw organic soil, dirt, and clay. We don't want this mixed in with our stone. And so it's got to be chipped up and served out into a bucket or something, along with the hole that we'll dig for the sump crock, and they'll have to get thrown outside. And if we were ready for dirt backfill outside, you could go right over the windowsill over here and keep on trucking. So I might, since we've got the stone where we want it, we'll pull a little landscaping cloth square out there, which needs to be there before we backfill it all. And then the lump of dirt that comes out from the sump crock and fixing up this trench, well, that's just a little bit of backfill on top of the landscape cloth. And if my inspection can't see that everywhere else that you can see it's correct, then so be it. So we'll get dug over to there and start connecting major drains. It's coming into focus. I've got to notch out the footer with the gas saw, and I really don't want, I thought about using a T here. A sanitary T on its side can work, but you really, as a best practice, would like to come in at a 45 with a horizontal leg. So rather than notching the elbow into the footer at a 90, we'll make a 45 degree. We're not going to make a perfect 45 degree notch here unless I feel like, I guess we'll try first. But if we end up notching more than we need just so we can put him at a 45, we'll be fine. Yeah, the timeout on these lights is kind of annoying. I may play with where that sensor is located so that they stay on more often, but we're getting down to the end of the day now. Oh, so the column came out from there, and so I have a Simpson 4-layer column cap coming, and I will probably cut the welds on the side. No, there's no use in that because it has to be welded on as well. I'll take the whole thing out of here, take it to the fabricator with the new cap, ask him to do the old switcherooski for me. And when it's ready, it'll come back in. It'll go around 4 layers here. Meanwhile, I'll get that one subbed in. I'll get where is it? The rest of that LVL. It's still here. We'll put him up as the 4th layer. And that nugget I brought from home went right in there as a subfloor repair. Real nice and heavy duty. Right from the full width sister to the full width existing joist. And just a few inches from the wall on either side of the toilet, and it's nowhere that anybody walks whatsoever, not to mention it's nearly 2 inches thick and super robust, so despite the fact that there's no tongue at the end of it and groove, it'll have very little deflection. Worst case scenario, we could put a block, which is kind of ugly, but I could block across this end with 2x6 and put a couple fasteners in and do the same thing over there if I really felt like it was necessary. But tomorrow we can get started with a big hole, put this toilet flange on, and go through the side of these couple pairs. That's a good question of like, if they're 7.5 and I gotta come through with a 3-inch hole minimum, that's more than a third of their height. And so I don't think I can cut through them. I'm going to have to find out how I go through a 2x8 with a 3-inch toilet line. Because it seems like you could just swing down and stay below the plane of those to go over and get into this wall. Oh, you know what? Because we've got wall thickness here. I keep forgetting that. We've got wall thickness here. So if I were to come down and stay tight to the face of the concrete, or actually up even next to the plate, and move over through that much, that would be obscured by the plane of this wall's drywall. And so maybe that's the easier thing to do rather than try to cut and come through 2x8. Because all I've got to do is get over the edge, and then I can stay in this finished wall and come straight down. And then we got to notch in probably a 4-inch elbow and bush down to 3-inch right where we go into the hub end of the 4-inch elbow, swing at 45 and head in that direction with a Y, and then out the back of the Y we'll come over here and try to get that. This thing we're going to put right on the center line that we want for the toilet, so it's sketched in at about the same distance from the wall as that one over there. But this one I'm going to play with so that the Y from the upper toilet, the back end of it comes straight out and has the flange for this toilet's location, and that's the line that we'll take down and around the corner. So if you follow me there, we'll get all that stuff. Today's Thursday, tomorrow's Friday. There's a chance we could really get somewhere tomorrow unless I run into a debacle with finding plumbing. I just screwed myself finding plumbing fittings. But anyway, we should be able to, it'd be sweet to leave at the end of this week with major plumbing drains kind of at least laying in the hole all the way over to there. And then outside I got a detail, I'll print it so we can look at it, but we have got to go to a, now the vent used to be in the wall right here if you remember, but we're gonna go out and come up outside somewhere. So we've got, first thing is a T with a vent, no closer than 5 feet from the window, but no farther from the foundation wall than 10 feet. So just about at 6 feet or something from the outside face of this wall, we'll put the T on this line and come up for a vent. And then we have a belly in it, or a trap. And then after that, we've got a clean out, which would be an actual Y coming up the 45 turn up to vertical, so that when you come down with a snake or something, that Y in 45 directs the snake around the corner and to clean you out to the street side. Because if you need to clean from here to that clean out, you can do a clean out in the wall, which we should probably do in one or the other locations here, depending on what we're going to do. We should have a clean out where you could have it snaked under. You should be able to snake it. We'll probably do it at both locations, one there and one over there. So you can snake from here to there to try and clear a clog, or you could snake in here. So there's just nowhere that you can run into a problem, although I don't foresee one happening. And so anyway, directly outside at 6 feet, we've got vent, trap, clean out, and then we can go to SDR 35, I believe, which is a thinner wall. However, that whole stack up of components out there has to be gasketed, and the SDR35 has to be gasketed out to the street. So we've got some detailed stuff from the county with regard to the sewer specifics that we've got to pay attention to. We've got some garbage lumber and stuff I'm going to put out at the road now that I'm just thinking about it. Or these garbages should go out tonight for tomorrow pickup, so I'm going to throw all the little chunkage and stuff that I can and load that crap out of here. Do a little organization. I think where we've got to go through the site drain, we're just going to like literally go and cut it out. I guess I could throw a cap on it. I'll throw a little perforated cap or something on those little holes so that we don't get stones kicked down into them. But again, it doesn't have to be one contiguous loop. It just has to, in large part, exist as a cavity all the way around to consolidate the fluid. Got that? Have you got that? All right. Let's pack it up today, do that much, and we'll get a little footage tomorrow and stuff, and then we'll hopefully have a logical end to this video. Okay, so the architect let me know that if we wanted to go to a 7 1/4, which fits planar in here, and it fits into that wall pocket without having to notch down and come through and be this sort of bulkhead kind of formation over the opening in and out of basically this space when we're all done here. I like that better as a best practice if it can be done, which it certainly could. So he said, you know, 4 layers here, and I had already had the 3, which it was fine because we added the 4th layer to the outside face, which is gonna, when we tighten him down, he's gonna be something that you can apply drywall to that will come in planar with this blue surface up here, which is what you want. And over here, we gotta take this existing joist out and replace it with that last rip of LVL, ready to go up there. The thing is, you know, people look at this situation where I've nailed it 4 times, every 16 inches, because we had kind of settled on it being up there, and then we changed our mind. You look at something like this and you go, what a living nightmare to get that down and out. Well, it really isn't. All we had to do was get started. There were a couple places that was actually kind of open a little bit, and we just used a flat bar like this one, drive him up and open him up. People see this operation, and sometimes if you haven't done a lot of this, feel like you're going to try to rip that whole piece off by prying and reefing and throwing your body weight against the bar on the ladder and trying desperately to pull all those nails, pull that piece out. It's not what we're trying to do. We're just opening up a little bit of a gap. And then we came through with the Sawzall in the gap with the right blade and just cut those nails right off all the way across, real easy peasy, okay? And then these ends that are up and onto the beam, I'm gonna come out a foot or maybe even 2 or something and cut through that all the way right there. I'm gonna do it at the other end. And then we're just talking about a layer that isn't scraping or trapped underneath the sill plate. And then he could be turned into 2 or 3 different pieces. See, I've already cut through them there with the Sawzall. So then you've got 3-4 foot long pieces, 2 or 3 of them right along. They could be pulled over, and the issue that we've got once the nails are cut along the side is that we're fighting the nails coming down from the floorboards above. And so if you're not trying to
pull out an entire long piece where you're not applying that pressure at the far ends of it or anywhere that you aren't working. And if you're not trying to drag the surface across the top of this beam or that sill, it'll tip up real nice, and you can come and go with it a couple of times until you've opened up a gap across the top, and then you can either Sawzall or oscillating tool cut all those off with a carbide blade, pop, 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 and the piece will fall right down and out. So you get the meat and potato sections out, then you can go down to the end, and then you can kind of tip it up as far as you can tip, and then sometimes you can just, you know, get a bar in across the top of that last little slug, and you can even go around to the other end and hit him that way endways and hit him this way endways, which racks those nails and gets that gap to open across the top, get those nails cut and pull that piece down. If any nails are still sticking through when you're done, you can Sawzall or oscillating cut those off. But really it's a matter of probably 10 minutes here and we'll have that piece down and out in real digestible components. That's another thing, into baking pieces it's easier to get them disconnected, but it's also safer to bring them down the ladder and let them just hit the floor. But then of course we stand everything up too right away so that you wouldn't think that you would, but you still aren't always thinking about it. You could stand on a nail or step on a nail or step off a ladder and poke your foot with a nail. So if you're not going to pull nails out of lumber, I always stand it upright just as a safety precaution. So that's how you get that done now. Watch me do it. Okay, I ended up saving on the blades. I don't have any more carbide blades right now for the oscillating tool, so I did just rip that down. I still have to cut the nails off, whether or not I do it while the piece is up or later. So we'll have to get some more blades. It's 6 1/2 dozen. The oscillating tool can cut the steel easily, but you're loading just a couple teeth, and you always want to have, I don't know, several teeth engaged with the material at any given time. It's just common like practice when you're trying to figure out what kind of tooth count you need in a blade. So one area of the tool ends up losing a couple of teeth, and then that area ends up doing more and more of the cutting because you get caught in the notch that it becomes, missing the teeth. So while they cut the nails really well, it's the point loading in the same location that does them in. And then with the oscillating tool, if you get loose nails, then they're moving back and forth. Same thing happens with the or the reciprocating saw. The same thing happens, but then you're not cutting anything if the piece is moving along with you. So while we have some incredible technology, I sometimes just get up here with the grinder wheel, which is spinning so quickly and has no teeth that it just cuts those right off. So that's probably what I'll do in this case. Lots of options there, some details about, you know, the different ways in which they work. So additionally, we have some discrepancy here because we've got some daylight under the old wall plate, and then we already had sill plate, and then the old sill plate turned and came this way, so we put this block in there. And while we used existing lumber, I didn't think, see, you know what? I think this is in the previous video, but I talked so much about how this is probably more like actual 2-inch as a piece, even without the gap. And then I put actual 2-inch here, which would arguably should be to here. But then somebody, when they built this, is probably at a time when they had, yep, then we're down to 1.5 inches in terms of its thickness. So that's truly the 1/4 inch different from there to there. This is just like an extension of that. Regardless, as a result, these boards sit down some below the top surface of this. However, they peel up and go above it right here. It's like a zoop. It's like a zoop. So, why is this? I don't know. However, I feel good about the fact that if we come in here with this last layer and shove him up in there, he's gonna force this little area up and flush with the top of this beam. So I'm looking forward to that. But before we do that, we gotta cut these nails off. These nails off. Also, I couldn't quite get this whole group over before to be flush with the framing the way I wanted it here, and I expect it's because that top edge is hitting these boards. So in forcing this up, they'll be held up, and then that's the question. Once I do that, can I smash the whole group over using that as like almost a shoehorn operation to take these up and over the top of this group of 4 layers? That's a good question. So I think I'll fit it in loose, and as soon as it's in place and tight, I'll see if I can drive these past to the point where this is flush, and if I can't, I'll have the flexibility to tip him and take him back out of there and try to come up with a different solution. Because I simply will not install this if the face of this framing isn't flush with the framing of the stairwell. Gotta have it that way. So we'll see. Hopefully this turns into just a real easy peasy situation here. Okay, that did the trick. I don't know if I mentioned this already or not, or if you could see it in the time lapse, but this whole thing isn't loaded right now, which is the point of all of this. But that's why I'm comfortable cutting things out with reckless abandon. Obviously not going to cut up our hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of LVL, but if any of that stuff, I see people comment sometimes or say to me on the site or something, you know, just always stressed out about whether or not there's a bunch of potential energy somewhere that they're going to release, you know, when they're cutting things. Think, if you're cutting something that you're concerned about and can do something about in the event that it starts to show that there's an issue, because of course these methods don't work if you're not prepared to handle it. But if you cut straight up from below and your cut starts opening up because it's breaking out, stop. If you cut across like we did here early in this series and it starts biting your blade because the cut is closing and it's pinching your blade, it's loaded. Stop cutting. Things like that. All right, it's time to wrap this structural segment up. We thought we were done the first time. Now there's another entire episode on getting the structural things right. We got this thing modification. We went down to Weldall and forgot, like I said, to keep from tripping through the leaf blower, but we also forgot to watch them weld that, which I don't know if you've ever seen somebody weld before, but you can't look at it. Anyway, touched up the primer on it. I won't tell anybody, you won't tell anybody, we're not going to tell anybody. Has it been tapped around to flush? Oh yeah, we had to get that last layer in there, which held up the ends of these floorboards, which allowed the top surface of the entire thing to slide under them, which allowed me to move it over to, or will allow me to move it over until it's, oh it is, I smashed it over here so it's flush there. It comes out some, which just means that we've got a bit of an arc in it, so we'll beat that over at another time, because I'm itchy and ready to stop showing you guys structural stuff, and I'm sure you're just about sick and tired of watching it. So that leaves this situation. The fact that this heavy 4-layer beam for the other side of the staircase is, well, that still looks out of whack. Still looks low on the right. We're gonna fix that, goddammit, if it's the last thing I do. Anyway, Ed got what I would call, or actually what my buddy Robin from Fisher Price would call the honeymoon fit cut on the back of that thing, so that this slides in there, 1.5 inch lumber slides in there. I told him, you know, he actually just put this up there, used it to trace, used the oscillating tool to cut it on both sides, and then reached between them with the Sawzall and got that cut out for us. And what's going to happen here is that there's an 1.5 inch rim board. We're going to add an 1.5 inch to it, and we're going to put that new 1.5 inch out onto or over the concrete as much as we can equally on either side of the window, effectively turning this into a double thick beam that's got purchase here and purchase over there, boom. And then we're going to tie this into that with a heavy inside corner. The longest piece that we can put in here has got to go in here from here to there. And I made sure, because I think I said in a previous video maybe, it's about 37 inches here, and the window opening's 32. So what is that? 5, 6, 7. So that's half of 5 is 2.5 inches worth of purchase for what turns into a double layer. And then that has been attached to the end of this guy. And so that kind of relieves the fact that we're applying a ton of pressure just to the sill plate, which does appear to be bowing underneath that. But it also, you know what, in fact it might be bowing to the extent that it's pulling this up here, because then that, well, it turns into another piece and stuff. So I was saying maybe it isn't loaded because it hasn't even shut this gap, but actually it might be so loaded that it's opening that gap over here. Although it would be tight, I guess it kind of is tight right there. And then where is it? No, it's got light. That's just dirt. That's just tit dirt. Okay, there's light underneath the whole thing, so I doubt that it's really loading that up so much. Here's the thing, if that was really sitting tightly, and this was really open, and this was a real belly, I'd want to put that heavy shore in here and lift it up until something changed or the dimension was the same before I did all the attaching. But we're going to skip that right now. If we run into problems later, I could back all the attachment out and lift and reattach. So for now, let's just make a piece, slide them in there, and put the angle in there before we leave for the day. Then I can wrap this vidya up for you guys and that. Alright, I did end up putting the shore in there, as you can see, and I overdrove it a little bit, lifted that open just a little more. I mostly just want everything sitting nice and tight here, and then fastened, and then when it sags back down under its own weight, in theory, it's not like a semi-trailer flatbed built with an arch, so that it's preloaded, so that when you load it up, it's pushed back down to level rather than being bellied. These are 12 gauge Simpson. This is 12 gauge Simpson hardware. It's very substantial. These are the 1/4 inch fasteners, heavy duty connector, but they're only 1.5 inches long. And so I'm not getting any deeper than this first layer or this first layer, which is stupid. I want something for double thick, so that from this side we're into this 2 layers, from the other side we're into these 2 layers, and we're into both of the layers that we bothered to add here, regardless of the fact that I am going to use nails to marry those together, and this has been nailed together. I'm going to want something, I don't know, I'm going to double check my work here before I go putting those all in. But anyway, we'll do the same on the other side, and then we'll decombobulate this combobulation. I'm going to leave all this right here for tomorrow morning. And don't tell anybody, but we've been... Don't look at that. We've been plumbing, and so that's the next video. But I just, for the love of God, wanted to finish structural stuff in here. So we've sistered all the overly long joists. We've quadrupled the side of the stairwell that isn't anything more than supporting a lot of stairwell weight. We may even start, because this is dipping a little below this one where it has a post, so the stairs are going to come down here, and so we may not have an opening that goes to nothing over the stairs. There may be a wall to about this point under this, and then it'll open the last 3 or 4 stairs on down to the floor, just so that we've got a triangular wall underneath this beam, and then under the stairs again with the stringer sandwiched in there, which is to say that we can shove the belly up from this and build that in underneath, so it holds this perfectly level, just like that's held perfectly level with a post, because the post is called for, again, due to the outside of the original home. We got our 4 layers in there. That has been cranked up to perfectly level with the plate all the way around this house. The ends of the beam are level with the top edge of the house. 1, 2, 3 of these bad boys. We need to get some cribbing stacks in here, put the heavy shores or a 20-ton hydraulic jack on here. I really could care less. I might get a 30-ton hydraulic jack just to own one. Anyway, the last little 1/2 inch that these need to go so that the main beam is perfectly level, but we'll do that down the road. We sistered, not to add strength, but to complete these joists that had been cut back. There's one there and another one. So there's just a single under that. And then we quadrupled on this side, again, the outside edge of the original house. Everything that we cut off that had been attached to the original stick that was in there has got a hanger on it now with hanger screws. We cut the 2x10s up to 2x8. And so we're in really nice shape structurally here. A couple little touch-up things to do when we get there, but we know what's ahead of us. That will finish up at a point in the near future, but I'm not going to hold out on you. We've nailed a lot of these sisters, but the ones over there need it. All the way down through the rest of the house need it. This still needs a bunch of running around nailing that we're not going to do. Stop looking at that plumbing. Stop looking at it. We'll do that in the next video. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. We'll see you.